beings that had been shown inside that this was a controlled explosion. And that at the same time that the event had taken place, that there was an exercise being conducted on an actor that had been arrested. So the dispatching wasn't getting it just right coordinations to get to the plane that was hitting the towers.
Right, right.
So how all of a sudden all this information that was circumventing the line to be not exposed to the public, why is everybody still believing that these acts of terrorism are being developed by these insurgent groups? And here we have documentation that there's question that it was ever a terrorist attack at all.
Right. So he points out questions of what happened with 9/11 and whether the government was involved. I don't happen to. I know people believe that there are questions. I don't feel the same level of questioning about 9/11. I certainly believe Al Qaeda was involved. I certainly believe this was a terrorist attack. I respect people's view that they don't believe that. What I do talk about in the book, and what I think is more the case with the results of these sting operations, is that on 9/11 the FBI was caught completely flat-footed. They had underestimated the threat of Al Qaeda from the very beginning. They, for example, only had one person in New York who spoke Arabic. This was an agency that just wasn't ready to combat a growing threat of Islamic terrorism. And so what we've seen from a policy standpoint is a real overreaction to that, where the dictate from the Bush administration at the time was never again. We don't want another terrorist attack. And so what we have is basically this policy where they're trying to preempt terrorists, and as a result of that, they're using these sting operations to draw them in. Such as Mohammed. Yeah. Yes.
When you were doing your research for your book, did you speak with anybody at the FBI to get their point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with dozens of agents, several of whom I quote in the book. I mean, obviously, people at the FBI, there are some that worked with me on the record, others that worked in background. The FBI's perspective, and I go, I think, to great pains to make sure that I kind of spell it out. Their main concern is they feel that this is what the American public would want, that this is someone who says they want to commit an act of terrorism, and they feel that the American public wants them to intervene. And their feeling, which I think is easy to be empathetic to, is that if you're an individual FBI agent and you have information that this 19-year-old kid says he wants to commit an act of terrorism, their feeling is, well, what would you have us do? Do we just ignore him and hope he outgrows it, and then 6 months later you find he actually ends up attacking a shopping mall and killing innocent people? I mean, no FBI agent wants that to be on their record. No one would want that, right? I think everyone in this room, if they could prevent it, would want to prevent it. But ultimately, what ends up happening is in that overabundance of caution, they end up getting people into these sting operations that on their own don't have that capacity. The FBI's feeling in this is that the growing threat of terrorism in the United States is not this, as I mentioned before, this idea that Al Qaeda or another affiliated group is going to send a group of terrorists into the United States. Is that there are people here who want to do harm, and they're going to watch a jihadi video and be inspired by that. And so that this creates kind of a policy of prevention. And then the other benefit of this program, and it's harder to measure, is under the broken windows theory of law enforcement. What the FBI wants to create is a hostile environment for terrorism. So if you're a real terrorist in the United States and you're hearing about these sting operations, if you're trying to find a collaborator, anyone you find, you might think, well, is that guy an informant? Is that guy an undercover agent? And so that tends to be one of the side benefits that the FBI believes they're creating through these sting operations.